Welcome to Lock In Buffalo, your finger on the pulse of the Western New York and Buffalo market. We have a great show today. We're here with nightlife maven, cultural curator, and restaurateur operator Mark Supples. So get ready to lock in to Buffalo. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, Mike. And if half that was true, my bank account would be much bigger.
Well, you sure got enough runway in front of you to make it happen.
All right.
You got some great projects currently in the works.
Well, thank God for Austin, Texas. That's where the money comes from.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's we've been open down there 32 years at Casino El Camino, and then a second place about 12 years, Casino Southside Lodge. And it's pretty interesting to compare Austin and Buffalo 32 years ago to where they are today. And, I mean, there's just a world of difference. They're now, at 32 years ago, we were fairly similar in size. We were about 350,000. They were about 425. And now they're the 11th biggest city in America, and we've shrunk. They claim we have 275,000 people, but I actually did the I thought it'd be fun. I was a census volunteer during the last census, and they absolutely have no idea how many people live in Buffalo.
That's concerning.
Yeah, it is. I mean, by law, you have to fill out the census, but when you go to people's, most people don't do it. And when you go to a door now, almost everybody has a Ring doorbell. And when you see a guy with a little badge and a clipboard, you're not answering the door.
You're hiding behind the couch.
So an old guy grabbed me as I walked out first week, and he said, kid, you want to learn how you do this? I was like, yeah, sure. He goes, you go in, you sit in your car. He goes, you knock on like 5 doors. Nobody's going to answer. He goes, every third house, just guess how many people live there. You can tell by, like, how many toys are in the yard and stuff, and write it down. And the other ones you put that nobody answered, and then they'll send you back next week, and you'll keep this job for, like, a month. He goes, but we have no idea. He goes, and you have to take people's word, and they might have a couple people living in the house that aren't supposed to be in the house. So, you know, they might have 5, but they say there's 2. You know, for a couple $1 billion, the government could just hire Apple and Facebook and know exactly how many people live in every house.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't know if Apple would agree to cooperate with the government, but if all they were telling them was how many people were there, it'd be easy enough to find out.
Yeah, I mean, just from the cell phones alone, it would probably be substantially more accurate. Oh, well, Mark, most people watching, I'm sure, know your establishments, but they probably don't know your history. Why don't you take us back to how you got started in the hospitality industry as an operator? I
think my first job was, I had always had jobs since I was a kid. I had one of the biggest Cheektowaga penny saver routes in the history of Cheektowaga. I had 1,200 papers. They had to be delivered on Tuesday and Wednesday night. So I hired a couple friends, and we would get the route done. And so I was the kid that bought Slurpees for everybody on the corner. Go ahead, get the large Slurpee. I got you covered. And so my first restaurant job was at Pizza Kitchens in Cheektowaga. I was 15, but I was about the same size I am now. And so I went in, and you had to be 18 because they served beer. So, of course, I said I was 18. They gave me the job. And within, like, 2 weeks, I was kind of in charge of the place. And, you know, the guy asked me, do you want to do deliveries too? I was like, sure. He goes, well, you know, you have a license, right? He said, of course I have a license. And so I just, you know, he gave me the form and just change a few numbers on the guy above you. So at age 15, I was out in a Gremlin hatchback delivering pizzas. It was great. I tell my friends, if you guys want a pizza, just call in a pizza, and it'll be a stiff. You know, in those days, you couldn't trace phone numbers or anything. So I'd go back, I'd sell the pizza to my friends for $2 on the street, And I'd say, hey, boss, it was a stiff, but I found some kids that gave me $2. He was like, man, you're good at this.
Your pathway led you to the Wharton School of Business. Is that right?
Actually, I went to Penn, the arts and sciences, but most of my classes were in Wharton because I was an economics major.
Oh, great. So
and
I'm going to love your perspective.
And worked my way through college bartending.
Yeah. And then in 83, you landed in?
83, I opened. I got out of school, and I was like, I should probably get a job at a bank or an investment firm or something. And I was like, yeah, but what I really want to do is open a bar. And I said, if you're going to open a bar, you better do it now and not after you work for 20 years and you come home and tell your wife, oh, by the way, honey, I emptied out our retirement account, and I'm opening a punk rock bar in Allentown.
So in 83, what was Allentown like?
It's funny. Kids or adults that weren't around at the time have this image in their mind that, like, Buffalo was really rough and tumble and decrepit. And I'll tell you what, business in 1983 in Buffalo is a lot better than it is now.
Sure.
I mean, bars and restaurants were thriving. Guys were developing major projects, apartments. I thought it was, and the music scene was fantastic. The theater scene was fantastic. It was a great town. You could live kind of as a slacker, maybe work 30 hours a week and have a flat off Elmwood or Richmond. Over on Grant Street, it was really inexpensive. And, I mean, I used to walk up and down Grant Street. I don't think there was, 2 or 3 empty storefronts on Grant Street. And now my guess would be it's probably about 80% vacant.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if you go to a Showplace Theater show.
That younger people in Buffalo think that they kind of invented, the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was thriving. And, I mean, even in the 70s, I mean, things were, there was a place to go every night in town. And, tons of young kids had jobs at Bethlehem or Ford or GM, and they thought nothing of putting a 50 down on the bar, which pretty much bought you and your buddies drinks all night in the 70s and 80s.
So when you landed in Allentown, is you fixated on that location for the Pink Flamingo prior to it being known as the old Pink. There was already kind of an established scene, or would you?
Well, we were really, even though we didn't call it a punk bar, that was more or less, what my intention was. We called it the Pink Flamingo, 1, because I loved the John Waters movie, and 2, I figured it would keep the boneheads from Brick Bar out because they would think it's a gay bar, and it worked pretty well. So
it was you and Militello, really, or kind of the?
No. I was on my own.
No. But from Mulligan's, right? You guys are kind of the guys creating the nightlife scene at the time.
But I actually was working at Brick Bar when the Pink, which had been like Locker Room North or some goofy name like that, became available. And I walked over, and Kevin Brinkworth was my first landlord, which was another great experience that we could make a whole show out of.
Sure. So you kind of curated this counterculture scene. One question I just want to personally know. So what's the craziest thing you've seen an individual do at the Pink?
Well, this we might have to cut out. But
you don't need to name names.
We won't name names.
Yeah.
At the time, cocaine used to be pretty popular.
I heard that.
And I don't think it is anymore. I wouldn't know. But everybody was doing it then. And some guy came in and he said, can I use your office for a minute? And I figured, he wants to, lay out a line for me or something. And I go in the office and I see that some ceiling panels had been moved. And I was like, oh, shit, man. So I look up there. The guy had like a kilo up in the ceiling. So now, a little later, he's like, can I go back in the office? I was like, yeah, please get that out of here, right? He goes in, and he was so high, he forgot which ceiling panel it was. So the guy starts taking all the ceiling panels out of the thing. So I come in, what the hell are you doing? He's going, you took my shit. He pulled a gun on me and made me pull my pants down and take my shirt off.
Oh, a little paranoia set in.
You think?
Oh, my God.
That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's a good one. You scratched my itch there. So the pink is roaring. What made you look and say, all right, I want to grow up a little bit and come up with a new cultural phenom and pivot over to the Mothers Initiative?
Well, actually, in between was we opened the Pink Flamingo on Main Street, which was an old Paul's Pies warehouse, and that was 10,000 square feet. I'm pretty sure we were probably the first guy to open that kind of. There was a couple of music venues at the time, but we were pretty much the first kind of like New York style, grunge nightclub, and that worked out pretty well. And then a few years after that, I was like, well, it's about time I did a restaurant, and then we started with Mothers.
Yeah. And from the outset, was it always intended to be kind of a late night spot?
Well, that was our intention. I used to go in Mothers before I owned it quite a bit, and I would be like, why do these guys close at 10 o'clock every night? This makes no sense. They have 20 people at the bar, and they're giving last call. So I said, let's just try something a little different. And we served full dinners till 3 in the morning for 32 years.
Yeah.
Every night of the year, except in my old age, I got a little soft, and we closed early on Christmas Eve and Christmas.
You hung up the Scrooge hat. Well, I've had some phenomenal evenings in both of your locations. So on behalf of many of the residents of the city of Buffalo, I want to thank you. So let's pivot a little bit from your hospitality background and as an operator in the city of Buffalo, working with developers and working in the political climate over time. And you have such a great perspective in that. You've seen the uptick in a market like Austin. You've seen what could be done the right way. And then obviously you've seen the transformation of the city for good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
From a perspective of somebody on the ground, what was, in your opinion, how would you sum up what really went wrong with the development of the downtown area?
I mean, the easy answer is all the big decisions they made were made for political reasons and not realistic. And government shouldn't be run like a business, but they should certainly look at a business perspective about gigantic financial decisions that are being made. And I don't believe they relied on professional and academics enough and relied more on politicians. I mean, the big three would obviously be the subway system down Main Street, the UB campus going out to Swampland and Amherst instead of Buffalo. And those are just monumental. Those two things alone. If they had thought that, well, let's put UB downtown, and one thing about universities is they're pretty recession-proof. So, for instance, University of Texas is in downtown Austin, and that's 100,000 people that it doesn't matter if there's a recession. They're still out there. Oh, excuse me.
No, you're good.
Let me turn that off. Those people are going to spend their money. Their parents are going to send them their money, and it's a gigantic difference. And I know their thinking was that, cars off Main Street will create public access and stuff like that. You could look at so many cities where it didn't work, and they were able to change that. Philadelphia is a very good example. When I went to school there, They took traffic off Chestnut Street, made it all public access, and but a big difference being when they wanted to change it back, they didn't have to tear up subway lines and electrical substations. So it was a couple $1 million. I think Buffalo's close to $100 million in spending on getting rid of, well, not getting rid of the subway, but adding cars to Main Street, which I believe the whole thing is only going to add about 250. And there's really not much traffic down Main Street. It's not a street you really want to drive down. So it's, they're spending like $100,000 per parking spot, which is crazy. And then the new administration is going to take away as much parking as they possibly can. And if you listen to people, especially suburban people, why don't you go downtown more often? It's almost always parking.
You're 100% right. Why do you think it is that this new administration wants to get rid of parking?
Because it's a modern liberal idea that we're car centric, and we're going to force you not to be car centric. The complete streets, they call it a success, but I see it as an abject failure. You look at Niagara Street, where they totally blocked off bike lanes. The business people are not happy about it whatsoever. It took off a ton of parking on Niagara Street and made it into one lane each direction, so that they probably have the only rush hour traffic in Buffalo. It takes like 30 minutes to get from up on Amherst Street to downtown on Niagara Street during rush hour. And don't get me started on Allen Street. Mark Goldman and myself would go to the meetings when they were planning the street transformation, and we begged them to consider alternatives, one of which would be slanted parking, which would have added like 38 parking spots in Allentown, which parking in Allentown comes at a real premium. And instead they did the raised curbs with bollards, and they actually took away, I think, 22 parking spots. The streets, and again, it happened during COVID, so you can blame COVID, but the streets never recovered. And it sure as heck didn't help that the Pink and Brick Bar burned down.
Mm-hmm.
Things are really rough down there right now.
It's a shame to see it, because it's, in my age bracket, I'm 39, and I got a good long runway of a lot of time down there, and enjoyed it. Arguably, at least in my recollection, in some of its heyday.
if there was any neighborhood in Buffalo that was similar to big city living, it was Allentown. You had $500,000 homes 4 doors down from punk rock bars.
Right.
You had all-night diners. In fact, the Allentown Association in the 70s paid a consultant to come and say, how can we improve our street? How can we make it more livable? And they weren't very happy because the consultant said, don't change a thing. He goes, cities kill for mixed-use stuff like this. You have a dry cleaner, you have a liquor store, you have a hardware store, you have 2 bars, you have a restaurant, you have a fast food Greek diner, you have art galleries, you have antiques, all within a 2-block area. He goes, don't change anything, which they didn't want to hear.
Sure, sure. Well, you haven't just been an observer of all of this. You've gotten active. In 2019, you ran for the Common Council in the Niagara District. What did that reveal to you about the political establishment?
Well, again, it's kind of egotistical to say, but I knew I had no chance to win. I mean, one, you can't beat an endorsed Democrat in Buffalo, and 2, you certainly can't beat an incumbent endorsed Democrat in Buffalo. but even though I kind of dislike all political parties, the Republicans and conservatives were like, sure, you want to run? Go ahead. You know you have no chance of winning, and we're not going to help you at all. But I was fine with that, and it was actually it was kind of fun, throwing some ideas out there, and the people, and I walked Grant Street and the district, which I'm not sure the councilman actually knows what streets are in his district, because they change them every so often to be like, yeah, I want the gay crowd. No, I want more black people in my district.
Yeah.
It's kind of if you look at the districts, they're really funny the way they're shaped. But the people I spoke with and threw out some alternative ideas for city government, seemed pretty enthused and everything, and I was really quite surprised. I think I got about 25% of the vote, which means that quite a few Democrats must have voted for me. But it's so disconcerting in Buffalo that I think the voter turnout was 18%.
I think we've seen a lot of folks in the city of Buffalo wanting to get more involved, wanting to stay more informed. And unfortunately, I don't think the media establishment in Western New York has been a great resource to maintain education, at least on the real stories.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of funny because there's so much low-hanging fruit out there. I mean, most of the good scoops I've gotten have just been hanging out at the end of the bar and listening to guys talk. In Buffalo, people don't even bother to keep secrets because, it's common knowledge about this. I really can't go into too much about that stuff, but it's easy to find the real stories in Buffalo. But the reporting we have in Buffalo, thank God for guys like Investigative Post, even though they're incredibly biased in their reporting, at least they're getting some of the stories out there. And on occasion, they're even forced to report on liberal Democrats' misbehavior.
What else is there to talk about, really? So, obviously, the current administration's only been in office for a short period of time. The current mayor, there's a lot of back and forth between the mayor's office, the common council over this 25.8% tax increase. As an operator in the city, obviously it's gonna affect development. It's gonna affect the landlords. It's gonna affect the residents, the homeowners, the renters, and then obviously people doing business in the city of Buffalo. Everybody's going to get impacted here. What do you think of this? Obviously, the city needs to cut its deficit. It needs increased services. All that costs money. I get it. What do you think of what's really going on? Do you think it's necessary? You think the money's going to be utilized properly?
Well, that's the big if. I have personally no problem. My taxes go up about $1,000 a year, and the majority of Buffalo people, their taxes go up $300 to $500 a year. Now, that can really, really, really affect someone who's already making some tough decisions with their budget. It doesn't seem like much to people that are making $100,000 a year, but if you're living on a fixed income, $30 a month can be a pretty big deal. It could be maybe instead of going out to breakfast one day a month, you don't go out to breakfast ever. It might be we really can't keep the dog. It's really sad to think about that stuff, but the city definitely does need the money. But I think to soften the blow a little bit, they really have to do a line-by-line budget. And I actually enjoy going to City Hall. I go to quite a few Common Council meetings and walk around. And there's a lot of people that I don't think they know what their job is. You see them and their door's partly open, and when you walk down the hallway, all of a sudden the door closes real quick, and there's no nameplate on the door or anything, and you're like, I wonder what that guy does. And there's whole departments that the city shouldn't be involved in. I don't believe that it's the city's job to run drug prevention programs. I don't think they should be in employment training business. If they get federal or state money and pass it along to groups that can do that. For instance, I believe the group is called BETC, and it's, similar to like the water. It's just a cesspool for political appointees, and I'd like to see 10 jobs that aren't political appointments that they put people in, and their budget is in the millions. And, the director's been accused of, they say it's a boys' clubhouse of sexual harassment, and there's several ex-criminals involved in that organization as well. And some of them just keep moving up it's been a great spot to put people that for some reason or other have to leave office, mostly not for good reasons, until people forget about their misdeeds, and then they can go back to political office again. But you stick them there for a couple of years, and they make, $100,000 a year. And
Keep them on ice.
Yeah.
Until they're ready to come back into public
as
life.
long as they promise not to show the pictures they have.
Well, yeah, we see that going on the global stage now.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned a lot about kind of cleaning up the expenditures. It seemingly, as a city resident for almost the last 20 years, seems like the mayor's office is a little easy to pass this revenue buck on the city, on the city residents, the homeowners, right? Well, the city owns a lot of assets.
Yeah, I believe 7,000 vacant lots and 10,000 properties.
Right. And you would think maybe start getting a little bit creative there. We could increase some revenue there. There's a housing shortage in the city already.
Creativity is not their strong point.
It seems to be the case.
And I believe if they got private developers involved, especially smaller minority, women, veteran-owned businesses involved, they could triple the number of homes that are being built in Buffalo, which is unbelievably small amount. And I've brought it up to several people that they should look into. For instance, now the county and city made a partnership, and they built, maybe 12 new homes. They cost about $500,000 a home.
Yeah.
And they're selling them for $300,000, which I'm okay. You have to subsidize a certain income class of people with government subsidies. But I've talked to some architects, and there's perfectly good-looking, well-made, weather-stable, tiny homes that could go on these lots. The lots already have the hookups to them, electrical, plumbing, and everything. In fact, I was online the other day. There's some really nice-looking two-bedroom tiny houses in the $65,000 to $75,000 range. So for $500,000, you could put 7 contiguous. And if you combined lots, you could even make it really cool, like a tiny home community with a central garden area, some recreational space, maybe a storage building for people.
Yeah.
The stuff isn't rocket science. There's people out there that are ready, willing, and able to do it, but you have to give up some autonomy to allow them to do it. And one thing they don't want is anybody else, stepping on their turf.
So you wouldn't just chalk it up to laziness and ineptitude. It's control.
Yeah, I believe that's a bigger part of the problem. I don't think most of the public servants we have, elected officials, are lazy. They work really hard at keeping their jobs. So, for instance, and I believe his use of social media is unprecedented. Sean Ryan is doing a great job on social media, but my guess is it probably takes 2 hours a day, and I know at least 300,000 in salaries of guys that are doing his social media. Maybe that 2 hours a day might be better spent on researching more innovative solutions to some of the bigger problems we have. But he's really good at that social media stuff, man. His guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, not even any of his 3 or 4 deputy mayors.
Yeah, you only see one of them. You only see Swanakamp around. I wonder what the other 3 are doing.
Don't know. Not sure why they are necessary. But in any event, we're going to play a little game now we call the Wheel of Buffalo. And I'm going to spin the wheel, and you're just going to give your honest and upfront response to the category.
Fair enough.
Fair enough? All right, let's see what it landed on. All right, I like this topic, the hardest truth. What would you consider to be the hardest truth that the people of the city of Buffalo really have to come to terms with?
That they have to actually learn a little bit about candidates that are running for office and make their decision not based on party affiliation, and actually get out and vote. And if they spent 1/10 of the time that they spend bitching on social media, actually trying to find some facts and figures, we'd be a more informed electorate, and there might even be a chance for a non-Democrat, lifelong endorsed, boot-looking party guy or woman to gain office.
I love that. Clock that one. Clock it. We got a young Republican right here.
Nothing to be embarrassed about that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right. Last segment of the show is called Sell Me Buffalo. So, Mark, sell me downtown Buffalo like it's about to take off.
You can get some amazing real estate at dirt cheap prices right now. And I don't know much more of a sales point than that, because I don't think it's about to take off.
Well, I was going to ask you to take the position of my business consultant and advise me against it. So,
some of the younger kids in town, they come to me for a little bit of advice, and they want to get in the bar and restaurant business, and most of the time they also want to borrow money. But I highly advise them not to open a business in Buffalo at all. If they are going to open a business in Buffalo, do it in a neighborhood like South Buffalo, or even Kaisertown or somewhere. Don't open on Elmwood, Hurdle, downtown. It's a really tough environment, which I don't see changing soon at all. And my advice is to go, even though it's not areas I want to hang out too much, go out to Orchard Park. South towns are still, hot as can be. Go to North Tonawanda, super hot area, but stay away from Buffalo.
well, the show is called Lock In Buffalo, so what I would ask you, in your very well-informed opinion, is what, and this could be a whole show. What, in a summary point, has to change to make Buffalo work?
Oh boy, that's
It's a loaded question.
yeah. It's really tough. One thing that could really help a lot would be to open up immigration. Again, the only growth Buffalo has had has been immigrants, and they tend to build quite strong communities in neighborhoods that have been neglected for a long time. You look at the Banglas over on the east side, or Yemenis in Buffalo, Pacific Islanders. They build quite strong communities. They take care of each other. They open small businesses. They employ people. They pay taxes. It's just absolutely, if Buffalo elected officials could change the growth of immigration, unfortunately, it's not up to them. It's more of a federal issue, but it could really transform Buffalo if we could get 2,000 or 3,000, and for the most part, it doesn't cost a lot of government money. People that come in generally they only get subsidized for about 6 months, and then they're on their own, and somehow they make it work. A lot more than people in Buffalo that have been on public assistance for 20 or 30 years and then complain about the immigrants opening small businesses in their neighborhood, saying, why do we got to go to Arab stores? It's like, well, because they open small businesses. You had every right to do that and every chance to do that, and there's help out there for you to do that. So, step up and don't blame the immigrants for the problems in your community. They're the savior, not the problem.
All right. Well, we're going to close it out. You heard it here from Mark Supples. Lock in Buffalo, sponsored by Cross Country Mortgage Buffalo. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, make sure you follow, make sure you share this content so we can become a more informed Buffalo and Western New York area. Mark, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome, Michael. Thank you. And